brothers and sisters, the Lord is with you.
And also with you.
We continue listening to God speak to us from the Gospel in the tradition of Mark.
Glory to you, Lord.
Jesus came into his hometown, followed by the disciples. When the Sabbath had come, Jesus began to teach in the synagogue. And the many listeners they were astonished and said, "Where did he get all this? What is this wisdom that has been granted? And these miracles that are performed by his hands? Is he not the carpenter, the son of Mary, and the brother of James and Joses and Judas and Simon? Are not his sisters with us here?" They found these things to be a stumbling block. Jesus said to them, "Prophets are not without honor except in their hometown, and among their own relatives and in their own household." He could work no miracles there apart from laying hands on a few sick people and healing them. Their lack of faith astounded him. Jesus made the rounds of the neighboring villages instead and spent time there teaching. And this is the gospel, the good news of our salvation.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus.
By the words of the gospel, may our sins be blotted out.
Amen.
Good morning. Just a little historical tidbit. This particular gospel reading where Jesus goes home and he's not accepted in his own home. He says the prophet is not accepted, even in his own house. That was the reason why a priest was never sent home to his home parish, because people knew him growing up. They knew who he was. They knew his faults and fables. They knew as a kid he used to, let lightning bugs into a neighbor's house like my brother and I used to do. But then again, this is not a public confession. But there was a little old lady that lived around the corner from us, and we used to collect lightning bugs and open the mail slot and then let them. Anyway, so I was never been able to God to St. Joseph's Church, which was my baptism. Be that as it may. We hear some very interesting words from St. Paul today. In my weakness, it is there that I am strong. Suffering. Suffering is as much a part of life as life itself. And we all suffer. We all experience suffering of some kind. Burnt the roast, and I suffer because I burnt the roast. I have a hangnail, and it hurts when I do this. Go to the doctor, and you say, "Doctor, when I go like this, it hurts." And he says, "Well, then don't go like this." So suffering has a variety of levels. Sometimes suffering can be as easy as a cut that you have on your hand, or it could be the loss of a loved one. It could be the loss of a loved one, or the fact that you are suffering from a debilitating disease. And so when we talk about suffering, we're talking about a situation that has a variety of manifestations on a person, in a person's life, in a person's family, that can be multiplied over and over and over again. It's the gift that keeps on giving, as they say. So we hear St. Paul telling us that God gave him this Satan, this devil, this imp, to a thorn in his flesh to keep him humble, lest he become too proud when he's preaching. And we could understand that because Paul was a very, very powerful and persuasive type of guy. He didn't have to tell you too many times before you were nodding along with him and going along with him and okaying with him and following with him. And that's why he had to be careful, because there was a movement that was making him as important or even more important than Jesus himself. And so he had to kind of push back, and that's why he's saying, I have to have this humility in me, so that I don't kind of use this gospel, this good news, this situation to make me the one that they're looking at. Okay, and so he says this in his writings that he had been given this thorn in the side. Now, what is it? Scholars never really came up with a definite thing. Was it that he was crippled, that he was ugly looking, that he had a hunchback, whatever? But from what I studied this week, most of the scholars thought it may have been an eye infection caused by a marsh fever, some kind of a malaria that would flare up every once in a while. Now, you're thinking, okay, marsh fever. They're in the middle of a desert. Where are they going to get marsh fever? Remember, this is 2,000 years ago. The typography of that whole area had changed drastically, and that there were areas that were marshy, and that the possibility of having some kind of a mosquito present that would have given some type of malaria was there. But be that as it may, it doesn't matter what the exact thorn, if you will, that Jesus experienced, or Paul experienced. But what Paul is saying is, I had to be careful about my pride, because my pride could get in the way of the gospel. And that's why he said, when I am weak, that is when I am the strongest. Because that's when the gospel becomes the word, the power, the authority, that which he is about, and not Paul. And not Paul. And we see this here again in Jesus' visit home. He goes home to visit his family, and now we are hearing, well, this is the carpenter, and in some translations it's the carpenter's son. Well, the Greek word that is used in the scriptures is not carpenter as such, but day laborer. And so Joseph could have been a mason, a handyman of some kind. You need a door built, Joe, build a door. You need a wall built, Joe, build a wall. You need indoor plumbing, Joe didn't know what he was talking about. So there was a variety of things. So he was a laborer. He probably went. Nazareth at those days was about as big as this room, and so he probably did a lot of work in Capernaum, which is a couple of miles away, and it was an up and coming seaside resort for the wealthy and famous from Jerusalem to spend time out of the city. So, but the fact is, regardless of what Jesus did, people knew him. They knew him as a child. They saw him grow up. And the question is, where did he get all this knowledge? All of a sudden, he comes back. He's this young upstart rabbi that they've heard about, and now he's preaching in the synagogue. And I believe it's in Luke. He ends his sermon with, today these words are fulfilled in your presence. And that's when some of them rose up and they were going to throw him bodily out of the city. If there was a time of suffering for Jesus outside of the Passion, that probably would have been it. The humiliation that he experienced among his own. Not just neighbors, not just people that he knew all his life, but probably even some of his own family members. Who is this brother of mine, this cousin of mine, whoever it is, think he is, that he's coming and he's going to tell us what rabbis have not been able to tell us for thousands of years. And that feeling of inadequacy, that feeling, that lack of ability, that he could not work many miracles there because of what? Because of what? Lack of faith. Lack of faith. Turn the page. So the people of Nazareth lacked faith. Did they believe in the scriptures? Absolutely. Did they believe in the rabbis that were living among them? Absolutely. Did they believe in the traditions of their people, going to Jerusalem once a year to celebrate the Passover? Absolutely. Did they feel that they had an obligation to support the synagogue? Absolutely. Where was their lack of faith? They believed. They believed. But they could not take that next step and believe in this individual whom they knew, who they saw grow up, and now was saying, these words are fulfilled. These words are fulfilled. Where did he get all this knowledge? How does it work now that he could not work many miracles here? Was it because of magic? It's because of magic. So Jesus is the magician. Jesus pulls the white rabbit out of his turban. That's not it. He couldn't work many miracles there because they didn't believe. They didn't believe. Remember last week's gospel? It was a long gospel, and there were 3 miracle stories there, or 2 miracle stories, but one was split in half. Jairus' daughter was sick. The synagogue official goes to Jesus. Jesus is on his way. This woman comes up behind him, touches the cloak, and she's cured of hemorrhage. And Jesus says, "Who touched me?" Now, she didn't say anything. She didn't say, "Jesus, will you heal me?" She didn't say, Jesus, like the blind man, "If you will, you can heal me." It wasn't like the 10 lepers that approached Jesus on the road and said, "Jesus, Son of God, have mercy on us." She just thought, even if I touch the tassel of his cloak, I will be better. That's not magic. That's faith. That's faith. She believed. She believed not because someone said, "Oh, there's Jesus, and if you go and touch that 3rd tassel from the right on his right arm, that one you'll be okay." No. She believed. Where? Here. Because faith does not make sense here. Faith is not something that we can analyze. Faith has to be rooted in the heart. Just like love is rooted in the heart. I may have mentioned to you before, in 45 years of being a priest, I did a couple of weddings. And every once in a while, I would say, just to get them a little more nervous than usual, I said, "And now we're going to have the bride come up and tell us why she's marrying this man." And the bride's face would, the makeup would literally, right? And then I'd say, "No, I'm only teasing you. I would never do that to you. But maybe I would." Because there's no words to say why. There's no words to say why. I mean, there's that old saying, for every pot, there's a lid. But that lid was made for that pot. It was hammered out, it was measured, it was designed to fit that pot. But that doesn't work with people. That doesn't work with people. Why are you with the person that you are with, and why are you with them for such a long time? What holds you together? And many times, Joe and I will be sitting, we'll be looking at the people, not to tell stories out of school, but sometimes you guys there. What in the hell glue holds those people together? What's the glue? I don't know. Because why? It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. But once we start looking into the heart, then it doesn't make any more sense to me than jumping off a cliff without a parachute, because it just doesn't make sense. But it does to you. That lady touched that woman, that old lady who spent her life, money, every penny she had on doctors who treated her, and she only got worse. The last straw was, hey, what do I have to lose? I'm bleeding to death as it is. I touch his garment, and if I'm better, I'm better. If not, oh, what the hell? But she had enough faith to go through the crowd and to touch his garment. Paul today says to us, I don't understand why God gave me this thorn in my flesh. Maybe it was to keep me humble. And he says that because of the fact there is no other reason. There really isn't any other reason why he should do that. I'm doing everything God has commanded me to do. He knocked me off the horse. They came after me. They lowered me over the city of Jerusalem in a basket. I had to run away from my life. I had to travel all these foreign places. What more? What more? And now, in Italian, we would call it volta. We've got this little thing that just keeps on nagging. And Paul says, that is what keeps me humble. That is what reminds me that it is not my work I'm about. It is about God's work that we are about. Many years ago, Father Joe and I went out to Missouri to Eden Seminary. Beautiful spot. And there was a clergy retreat that we had, and it was given by an old Catholic theologian from California. And he said to us, ladies and gentlemen, just remember, when the liturgy, when the prayer service, when whatever it is that you're doing becomes yours, God is out. God does not exist there. Because God is not going to be second up by you. So if I get up there and I can sing and I can dance and I can make everybody feel good and oh, Father, your homily was so good. God is not there. I've entertained you. I've entertained you. But that didn't bring you any closer to God. And that was Paul's problem. Paul could entertain them, but Paul could not bring them any closer to God. Paul knew that that was the mission upon which God had sent him from the beginning. So here we are, July 4th, 2021. Who would think that we would ever have gotten here, but here we are. And we're listening to these words yet once again that we've probably heard 100 times before. And you say, so what? So what? What do I do with this? I always liked when I was working at hospice we would have these in-services, and every in-service always had a little takeaway. And I was tempted to buy little Chinese containers so that I could give them out at church and say, here's your takeaway. What are you going to put in it? Then I said, they'll be all over the church and it's not going to work anyway, so you don't get one. But anyway, you have the idea of the little takeaway. What is the takeaway? What is the takeaway today? Now, the takeaway for James is going to be different than it is for Paul, than it is going to be for Mark, than it is going to be for Gary, than it is going to be for Irma, than it's going to be for anybody else in the church, because every one of us has picked up on something. Now, there may be similarities, but your takeaway is going to be different. Just like when you leave a restaurant, each of you are going to take away something just a little different. Something that has caused you to take special notice of and say, I would want some more of this. And what is that? Can we analyze it? Does it make sense? Or does it resonate here in the heart where God dwells? Does it touch base with where God is in us, where things don't make sense, but they're not supposed to? They're not supposed to. Paul did not understand why he had this thorn, but it wasn't his to understand. He recognized that he had it. So each of us, as we listen to these words, must say, what is the takeaway? Where have I been touched? What words of Jesus today has touched me that is going to give me the ability to proclaim the good news this week as I encounter men and women, boys and girls, cashiers, doctors, nurses, whatever and whomever I'm going to encounter? What good news do I bring them? And how do I proclaim that good news? Do I fling the door open in the doctor's office and say, I have the good news? That doesn't work. Because they Baker Act you and you spend 48 hours at the Florida hospital. But if you walk in with a positive attitude, joyful attitude, willing to accept whatever it is that the doctor is going to tell you, willing to accept whatever it is you're going to encounter in the line in Publix, whatever it is that you're going to experience on I-95, whatever it is that you're going to experience for these next days, that's your takeaway. And you've got to share that takeaway with the people you come in contact with. That's how the good news is shared. I've always said being a good preacher is 90% ham and 10% theology. Because anybody can get up here and sing and dance. But that's not what we're about. We're about touching the heart, waking you up and saying, Jesus is at the door. Unfortunately, he has no handle on his side. So you have to open it up from the inside. That's the only way he gets in.
Mm.